So I, like many of you, have been probably playing about 4 to 5 hours of Tears of the Kingdom every day since it came out, and I have stopped to cook en masse exactly once. Beside that, I've actually just been spam eating fruits and whatever pre-cooked stuff rolls next to a fire like I can find in the game world. The only reason I have stopped to cook is because my heart containers count has gotten high enough that eating randomly torched and pre-prepared meals from NPCs has become too inefficient. The process of actually sitting down to cook is still so very mind-numbing as it was in Breath of the Wild, as you have such a vast array of ingredients and they are all in the same inventory, meaning you have to scroll through your entire backpack to get to the items you want. Cooking is basically unchanged from Breath of the Wild, and I would have loved to see some kind of recent recipe system in the vein of auto build, which might have drastically cut down on TTC. That's time to cook, by the way.
But you know the business, and I know the chemistry.
The menuing for cooking is one of the most laborious things about this game, which brings me into my next complaint. The inventory management systems on offer here are still extremely tedious, probably worse so than Breath of the Wild, with the worst offender being attaching things to arrows and throwing. The sorting function does not belay criticism of this, as often, if I wanted to find something to attach to an arrow in the middle of a fight, it'll be precluded by about 3 to 15 seconds of linear menu scrolling, which loops back into the greater inventory problem. Everything that is not a cooked food or piece of gear gets thrown into the same inventory, everything ranging from milk and butter to flint, monster toenails, and precious gems, all housed in one inventory. By the mid to late game, when you have collected a vast assortment of flora and fauna to consume, as well as the body parts of every monster you've slain heretofore, there will be hundreds of items for you to scroll through every time you do any menuing, meaning that the time to menu only gets longer as you gather more monster guts and raspberries across Hyrule. This game really needed a more advanced filter or separate inventory panels for food, monster parts, and elixir ingredients. Changing gears here, the next thing I want to address is combat. Combat is actually more interesting this time around, but only due to one thing, which is the focus on elemental play and the ramping up of the sandbox elements that they had in Breath of the Wild. There is a vast array of tools here for you to make use of, and the enemies often have more nuanced reactions to elemental damage than their Breath of the Wild counterparts. However, the core of the combat is exactly unchanged from Breath of the Wild. There are 3 movesets for melee combat, and not including the boomerang. This is frustrating. The act of smacking someone with a sword is unchanging throughout the entire game. The two-handers are easily the best on account of being able to stun-lock pretty much any enemy standing upright with a 2-swing combo. This is how it worked in Breath of the Wild, and I'll actually forgive the simplistic nature of this system, because all of the adjacent systems that make combat more dynamic, why would you even bother with a sword and board when I can build a hovercraft with cannons and flamethrowers that melt enemies automatically? The only problem with all of this is, once again, how these new exciting combat elements are almost always blocked behind menuing without any real way to avoid it. Finally, the last thing I have to comment on is the economy. The game makes it significantly harder to come by rupees now. In my 30 or so hours, I've probably made less than 1,500 rupees in total. But then again, I'm also not like going on the internet and searching how are the best ways to find these things. Basically, resources are more numerous, but I don't know if I agree with changing the resale value of gemstones to less than half of what they were in Breath of the Wild. Because as it stands, it doesn't really feel like there are too many efficient ways to make money outside of diving back into a cave that you've already found and bam, harvesting the same couple veins of ore. This could be prone to change though, as I haven't really engaged with the main story all too much. I've literally spent my first like 35 hours or so exploring, doing shrines, and like diving into holes, metaphorically and literally. I have literally done 0 story content. Tears of the Kingdom, honestly though, aside from all these things that I would definitely categorize as nitpicks, is the most impressive open world game I have played in a long time. There is a mind-boggling large amount of ways that you can express yourself through gameplay, and these things are basically nitpicks compared to what is this monstrous, creative, and open-ended, ridiculous game that has me constantly getting distracted by something over or under the next hill. But please, give Link auto cook, he really needs it.